Hi there folks, welcome to another lesson from the FOCUS Online Academy, and today we're going to be looking at putting everything together from the FOCUS book, Discover, Connect and Achieve. So this is page 26. As you can see, it's not very long, but what this lesson is about is a summary of everything we've learned so far. So what you can do as a parent is to read through that chapter with your child and discuss it and maybe draw it. And as I said, as time goes on, there may be more resources in this lesson for you to download, etc. So do comment if you need any. And I'm going to go through putting everything together now using the cards. So you could order the cards and you could show your children and teach them this idea by using the cards, by copying what I'm going to do next, or you can put them in front of the video. So very briefly, let's go over what we've learned so far. The first lesson was you are important. And because you're important, everything you do counts. There we are. Everything you do counts because you're important. You're the only person who's been here on this earth in your body with your special talents and learning styles and experiences in this place now. And once you understand that, you will be able to see that what you do is often based upon what you notice, and what you notice is always dependent on how you're focusing. So if you understand how to focus, then you'll be able to master what you notice. And once you start to notice, that chap there's noticed the ball, and then you decide to kick it, you have an effect on the world. And in this case, it could either be smashing a window or scoring a goal. In a sense, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you notice, and what you do has an effect on everything. Everything you do counts. That's the first lesson. You're important. Everything you do counts. Every moment. Okay? So let's realise that we can control what we notice by understanding how to focus. So that was the first part. The second picture here is about the next chapter. So here are some examples of different focuses, and I call this your focus mode. And there are mainly 4 different focus modes, and sometimes it's one of them is if you're focusing on the future. One of them is if you're focusing on the past. One of them is if you're focusing on something that is actually connected to you, or it could be, are you connecting to something that's completely nothing to do with you and is it just stuff? And what often happens with people is that they're often switching from focus modes all the time, and they're having all these different thoughts all the time, and it can get quite confusing. What we can learn in this book is, once we understand the nature of focus, we can make sure that we're mainly focusing in one way most of the time, and then you again start to feel calmer, become more resilient, and life becomes much less confusing because you're only focusing in one way at the same time, not constantly going from different focuses to different focuses, different thoughts to different thoughts. So the lesson here is that let's start to identify which focus mode you're in. All right, so that's a picture. Endlessly thinking can become confusing, and it can. So let's break it down and let's start to learn about the different sorts of focus modes. And once we have learned that, then we can practice being in the one that makes us feel the best. So that was that chapter. And then we have look at other creatures. So is there all creatures like this? Do all creatures have different ways of focusing? Do all creatures have lots of thoughts, and then they're not sure what to do because it's lots of different thoughts and lots of different focuses? Well, no, actually. Most creatures, in fact all creatures I would say, don't do this. Most creatures just wake up in the morning and off they go, and they have what we can call one focus mode, which is to make sure that they do their task, whether it be, if you're a bee, going to find some flowers, looking after your baby animal children, making sure that the herd is safe, whatever it is. But most animals get up and do their thing, and then they use their brain to work out how to do that. So if it's rainy, they might not, if you're a bee, you might not go to get a flower because it's raining, so you might just stay in the hive. But it's all very simple. So in this chapter we realise that life is actually quite simple if you're a creature, because they only are thinking about one thing all the time. But we are different. People are different. And the reason that they're different is because we, unlike other creatures, we have different places within ourselves that we can visit. And depending on where we visit, changes our focus. So that's just an idea for now. So let's see if we can remember that by understanding that other creatures just get up and have one focus mode and off we go, whereas us, because we're people, actually can travel within ourselves to different places, and this changes our focus. So that's that one. Then we start to look at the different types of focus, and we start to identify which is a really good one for us. And if we can stay in this focus mode, then what we can do is start to build up resilience, and the more we build up resilience, the more we start to create good feelings. Our mind calms down and we become calm. So the next chapter talks about that, and the focus mode that is good for us we call being in flow. And when we are in flow, this is so important. When we are in flow, we identify this. When are we identifying what? When are we thinking about? We're thinking about the present. Where are we? We are in the real world. What are we aware of? We're aware of ourselves, what's happening to us, and what's our object of, object of interest. Our object of interest is something that is to do with who we are. We have a natural connection to it. So if we want to be in the being in flow focus, I'll go over that again, but we talk about it in the book quite a lot, and I'm sure you would have done some exercises with it. So it's when, present, where, real world. What are you aware of yourself, and your object of interest is something that is connected to you and has meaning to you. When we do that, we feel, as I said, calm and resilient no matter what goes on in the world around us, because we have an umbrella, and that's sort of protecting us because we're focusing in that way, and it can make us feel very grounded. However, it's not that easy all the time. It gets easier once you start to learn how to do it and you practice, but it is difficult because the world we live in today is very challenging, and so it is difficult. So this is why you need support. So you need a parent, a mentor, a support worker, social worker, etc., often to guide you on this, because it can be challenging. So there we go. There's a picture of being in flow can get difficult because sometimes the world is very tricky and we haven't quite mastered this, and it can get tricky. But don't worry, there's support out there for you. Okay. So that's that. Then the next chapter we start to explore the different parts of yourself. So remember back with the B chapter, we realised that actually we're different from creatures because we can travel within ourselves. We have places within ourselves that we can travel to, whereas creatures don't. They just get up and do their thing. But we as people travel within ourselves, and that affects our focus. So where do we travel? Where do we travel within ourselves? Well, there are two places you can visit. One is your mind, which is kind of up here, and one is who you are, which is kind of inside you, around your stomach area-ish. All right? So if you travel to your mind, then you start to notice different things, you start to give attention to different things, and once you start to give your attention to these things, they become alive and real. And one really common activity we do when we travel within ourselves to the mind and we start to give attention and focus is a computer. And we make this come alive when you give this attention. And I talk about that more in a chapter. So basically, whatever you give your focus to, whatever you give your attention to, whatever you start to engage with becomes alive and real. And the mind is somewhere that you can visit, which will make that your focus. So that's a mind focus. And the other place you can go to visit within yourselves is you can leave your mind, get in the taxi, go down here, and you can go into visit who you are. And in the book we talk about what that is. What is who you are? And once we start to understand our who we are is, for example, an element of that is your hobby, what you enjoy doing, what you naturally enjoy doing. Say I love cycling, I love bikes, so if I naturally start to ride a bike, I will start to feel meaning and purpose because I'm connected to that activity. If I love animals and I go and visit a rescue centre and do some voluntary job there, so I can raise money to help the centre care for the animals, that will give me meaning and purpose because I'm connected to animals. So what I'm doing, what I'm actually doing, remember you are important, what I'm doing is connected to you, and that gives you meaning and purpose. So once you start to get the hang of this, and information is in the book, once you get the hang of this, you start to automatically do things and notice things that give you feelings of meaning and purpose. And once you start to do them more often, you start to experience life in this way. So once you start to visit who you are more often, you start to build some good solid foundations by doing things that have meaning and purpose to you. So number one could be I like cycling and I'm going to go cycling. So that's a good feeling you've generated there. And then the next thing could be I'm going to go cycling to the rescue centre to do some voluntary work there. That gives you meaning and purpose. So you start to do that. And then once you start to do that, maybe you might start to meet people who are at the rescue centre. Maybe they're customers, whether maybe they're other volunteers, and so they connect with you because you've got something in common, you value each other, you can see each other for who you really are, etc. So you build up another solid foundation. So if you visit your who you are part of you, you start to notice what that means and you start to do activities that make you feel good. So that chapter is all about where we visit the mind or who you are means our focus changes, and once our focus changes we start to notice different things and then we start to do different things. Okay, it's all a choice here, all a choice. So now we've understood that, we go into the next section, which is all about emotions and feelings. So I have mentioned them a little bit before, but this time we're going to really examine what that is. Emotions and feelings, similar but different. Can you tell which is which? Now, most people don't even know there's a difference between emotions and feelings. But in the book, what we discuss is the two places that we visit, the mind and who you are. They communicate with you in different ways. And when we visit the mind communicates with us through using emotion. And when we are going into the who you are part of you, that communicates with you by using feelings. And by understanding the difference between feelings and emotions, you can often tell what your focus is and how to change it. So I talk about that a lot in that chapter. And an example of an emotion, the best emotion is success. Hooray! When you've won something, you become the best. Hooray! That's the example of a good emotion. And then good feelings are things that are to do with who you are, that are a plus. So if as I said, if I like cycling and I go cycling, that's a good feel. If I like animals and I'm doing something with animals, that's a good feel. If I'm around my friends and we're just connecting with each other in real life, that's a good feeling. And again, once we decide to choose to focus more on who we are, so we become more aware of the world around us in regards to what's good for us, once we start to do that, then what happens is we start to build up a bank of good feelings, which is like that picture I showed you a minute ago with the steps. You start to build up some strong foundations. You start to build up some good feelings. And once you build up good feelings, not only are you resilient, but guess what? Your mind calms down, right? Good feelings make the mind calm. And that's why people say things like, if you do music, it's art therapy or something. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't think it is therapy. But what it is that if you are connected to making music, if you're connected to do that, and you then make music, that's creating a good feeling for you. And if you create a good feeling, then your mind calms down. That's how we work. So that is the last pick card, and that wraps it up really, because we've got where we need to be. So the reason that understanding your focus means you have a calm mind and you feel resilient is because you started to understand the difference between the mind, the difference between who you are. You understand how to gather up good feelings, and once you start to gather up good feelings, you'll realize your mind calms down because you feel good. So we become calm and resilient. Okay, so that is a summary of the idea so far. There's a couple more bits to go, but as I said, any questions, any comments, please comment in the lesson, and hope you've enjoyed that. We're nearly there. We've got a couple more things to do, but well done for getting this far. Thank you very much.